republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would you all please make sure that your cell phones are either turned off or on silent? Mr. Vernon, if you want to get us started.
Perfect. I think a great way to kick off tonight's board meeting would be to introduce Miss White. And here to kind of celebrate Music in Our Schools Month, Miss White has brought in with her some members of our select choir. So I will turn it over to Mrs. White to introduce them, and they will do a performance for us.
So I was given a script to read.
Okay, I'll introduce Mr. Gaffney to do a script.
I was given my marching orders out there, so here's, sorry. Please join us in celebrating Music in Our School Month by attending the district concert on Thursday, March 20 at 7 p.m. at our high school auditorium. You will hear the growth of the music program with students in grades 4 through 12 performing in their respective ensembles. Then join us in singing the final piece. Sincerely, the music department. That's what I tell you.
Thank you. Select. So this is the select chorus singing the alma mater. So this has been around for a long time, but we recently just found this in the classroom. We brought it to the celebration last year, but we thought you'd like to hear it again. So we're going to move over here. Sopranos on the left, tenor basses in the middle, and then altos on the right. Yep. Only one of you move around a little more this way. Yep, slide down a little bit so there's a little more room.
Sorry, it's not dinner. Just
Yep, here we go. Just inviting you to our district concert. And that's it for us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Our select choir members, I have a token of appreciation for coming in tonight. No leaving. Some of you, this is a repeat offense, so this is a good thing. Come on up and please accept a token of appreciation for presenting for us tonight. We look forward to our district concert. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to skip over questions for the select board.
We did a little combination here. Normally at the conclusion of each athletic season, Mr. Welcher provides an update. Tonight will be part one of an athletic update due to some circumstances, but we had some outstanding individual accolades through some of our team members, for some of our winter sports teams this year, and I thought it would be appropriate to bring them forward tonight to recognize those individuals in part one of our athletic recognition for this winter. So, Mr. Welcher?
Thank you everybody for your time. I guess what I'd first like to say, I don't know if you guys have kids in school or athletes, these two started practice on November 18th. for this season. So we're getting on 3.5 months of athletics, school, holidays, vacations, family obligations. So these kids and their coaches should really be commended for the amount of time and effort they put into these seasons, because the winter season, if you're a sports parent during winter, it's forever. I appreciate everybody's hard work. First to my left here is high jumper Maya DeFurio. She's going to states this weekend. Mr. Briggs is going to give a quick recap of her season.
Well, I've been coaching since middle of August and had to stop. I'll have a break after this weekend, but 20 plus years of teaching, this is my first board meeting, and I'm pretty excited. And it's about this young lady. So this is a great touch to athletics to get us here to represent our kids. And Maya DeFurio is an awesome young lady. She came out for track a few years ago, and she hasn't turned back. And this isn't her first rodeo. I'll rewind back. She went to outdoor track state championships last year for high jump, and that was just the beginning. As a freshman, which is unheard of, it's a very technical event. And then she came back even stronger this season and put on a great show. The first or second meet way back in December, and hit the qualifying standard of 5 feet 3 inches. Mind you, running back and forth to run a relay, it was kind of chaotic, and she hit that standard, and it was a pretty exciting moment. But then, of course, she had a little injury that kind of snuck up on her, that kind of had a little setback. But a true athlete comes forth and gets better and does what they need to do to improve, and she did just that. She came back stronger than ever and went to state qualifiers this past weekend and jumped against all of the Division I, which are the big city schools, the Fairports, the Monroe County, and the small school districts. That's how indoor works. You are the best of the best when you go to state qualifiers, and she is one of the best in Section 5. She went on her third attempt for 5'3", third attempt. Second attempt, she went up, she plowed right into the bar, and we're like, dude, night's over. We didn't know what was gonna happen, but we settled down. She took a deep breath, and I'm telling you, she went up, her third attempt, she cleared that bar, and it was her best jump of her entire career, and it was just wonderful. And we jumped off that bench and went wild because we knew she sealed the deal and punched her ticket. And she will be going to Staten Island this weekend to represent Section 5, and of course Red Creek at the state championships. So we're excited. So
Second athlete up here is Rose Southwick with her coach Ben Popel, and Ben will just give a recap of the great things Rose did this season.
So unfortunately I had to write some stuff down because there's specific things we're going to talk about. So last year Rose went 1-11. That is a win percentage of 8%. This year Rose went 24-7. She had a win percentage of 77.4%. Okay. She won the Alexander Invitational. She won the Clash of the Creek. She won the Red Jacket Invitational. She's a Finger Leg League champion. She's a Section 5 champion, and she went undefeated in Section 5. So some huge accolades on that part. Last year in Section 5 there was only 115 girls. This year there were 200 girls in Section 5. In the state of New York, last year there was 1,343 girls. This year there was 2,108 girls. So this is a sport that is on the rise and it's rapidly growing. I do want to commend her. I told her when she first started wrestling, I said, eventually you will cry in the sport. She is like, no, I'm not. Like Rose, when she loses her match, she literally gets up smiling and she walks over to you. I'm like, okay, and she's going to prove me wrong, I know it. Well, one day she got hurt in practice and tears came out of her eyes. She goes, but I haven't cried. And I'm like, okay, well, so when she was done at the end of the year, she held it together when she came off the state floor. She walked up the stairs and I said, your parents are coming. She stopped, she turned around, she waited for them to come over. Her dad embraced her and wouldn't let her go, and that's when she finally relaxed. So it took all the way till that point for her to relax and realize that, okay, I can handle this. And then the next thing is she was talking to my son, and she said, I made it this year, next year I'm placing. So she's already got goals that she's working towards for next year. A couple clinics, tournaments that we already have planned. So this is Rose.
Really great thing. We had one of our basketball players and his coach are both unfortunately sick, so they were unable to be here. They're going to be at the next board meeting with a recap of a tour and the Ronald McDonald All-Star Game, which Joseph Decker was selected for. So in that as well, Joseph Decker was selected as the Wayne County Player of the Year. I believe this is only the second time that's been a boys basketball player has been selected at Red Creek. So we're looking forward to when Joey's feeling better to see him at the next meeting with his recap of his Ronald McDonald All-Star experience. So let's hear for Joe, and thank you all for
If you don't mind, I have two questions.
for the kids, right?
Yes, of course for the kids. Maya, how do you prepare mentally before your jump? What do you think?
Usually with some words from him, some from my friend Natalie. It kind of takes, I just have to kind of go off by myself and just focus myself first.
Okay, and how tall are you?
5'4".
And you jump 5'3".
Pretty impressive.
All right, Rose, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned from wrestling?
I'd say stepping out of your comfort zone, because last year I didn't really know anyone in the room. I just kind of did my own thing. And then this year it's kind of like we've all come together as a family, I'd say, and then like I talk to people that I never thought I'd have a conversation with. So for this, so.
Do you have a favorite move?
An arm spin.
Thank you so much.
Right?
I have a Maya question too. Were you just waiting for your third try, just like keep everyone else on pins and needles, and you just knew you had it, so?
Thank you guys so much. Good luck, Maya. If you want to come up, I think we have coins.
Yeah, I have coins for all
Mr.
four.
Briggs, too.
All
Yeah.
four.
Congratulations.
Take one of these coins.
I
Congratulations.
really needed to write that down. I wouldn't have been able to remember all of it either. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right, so we're gonna move on. I don't know if this is on purpose to you, Danielle, or not, but we always put really good stuff that's not budget related in front of you.
I love it because it wakes the room up.
Right back into the room, you know? Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. It's definitely less exciting than hearing about all the great things our kids do. So thank you for having me. We talked a little bit about the budget last month. This is kind of a busy season for us, so a lot of stuff has happened since then. And I wanted to kind of start talking about the things that folks are going to see get mailed home for them. So last year we had a lot of propositions. We had our capital reserve and a whole bunch of other stuff. This year, shorter. So we always have the budget for voters to cast their vote on. We typically have the purchase of buses. We'll have that as well. And then our libraries switch off pretty much every other year to determine if they will raise their levy or not. They don't technically have to provide that to us quite so early in the season, so I have that labeled here just as a potentially for right now. So that's what folks will see. That's what we're voting on this season. So, of course, our budget is a reflection of what we're investing in our schools. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're working towards for next year. So we have currently in the 24-25 school year 25 credit-bearing options for students, so they can earn college credit while they're here in high school. Next year we're looking at potentially having 10 brand new options, so going from 25 to 35 in 1 year. That's a great way to expand some options for our kids so that they can go to college already ahead of that game and hopefully save some money as well. We're also looking at, and Mrs. Ventura spoke about this during her presentation, adding a special education K-2 classroom. This would allow us to keep some of our kids here and keep them with their Red Creek community and have them be able to experience all the great things we do here. So that is one of the other options we're working towards. This year we also had the Career Center, which they do have their career fair coming up. They've been able to make some great connections between our kids and some opportunities that are out in our communities and help kind of get them on the path towards being able to walk out of Red Creek High School ready to go. So continuing that, making sure we can work on those community collaborations.
and connect our kids with what's out there in our area. And then as well, the continuation of the elementary summer school program. So last year during budget season, we talked a lot about all these great things we did with the COVID grants and how the COVID grants were expiring. Those ran through this summer, so we were able to use those COVID grants for this year's summer school. Next year's summer school will be funded using 21st Century funds, so we were able to kind of continue that programming for our students. We had a lot of great feedback from the community that it was helpful and it was good for the kids to be able to still have those connections throughout the summer period. So those are some of the things, when we talk about these numbers, these are some of the items that are behind the numbers you're seeing. What are we paying for? It's things like this. As far as academic priorities, last year we had the new ELA math curriculum. That's a multi-year process. So going into 25-26, our efforts will still be to continue implementing that curriculum with fidelity, making sure teachers are comfortable with it, and improving as much as we can with that, as well as aligning our reading and math interventions to that curriculum, so that we're not duplicating efforts and it can have the most impact on our kids. I won't go through all of these, but just keep in mind, behind all these numbers and figures you're going to see, we're doing a lot of great work with the kids, or a lot of great work with our staff to make sure that they're leaving Red Creek prepared. And these are some of the efforts that go into that work. So one of the things that's happened since we last spoke was our tax cap is due. And I'm going to give my annual disclaimer that a lot of times people refer to this as a 2% cap. It doesn't typically work out to a flat 2%. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But what the cap is if we levy funds at or below that number, we need 50% of voters to say yes to pass our budget. If we exceed this number, we need a supermajority to be able to get there. So those are kind of, when we're talking about the tax cap, those are the implications it has for our vote process. So this year, our calculation came out to an allowable increase of 3.6%. That's about just under $185,000. Again, why is it over 2%? There are some variables that go into that. And I did pull this 10-year history here. You can see it kind of jumps around. So I just want to make it clear that, when you hear 2% cap on the street, if we refer to that, sort of colloquially, it's a little bit more complicated. The main thing here is that 3.6% for us is what we call tax cap compliant. So using that 3.6%, if we were to go up to our allowable levy amount, that would bring us to about just under $5.3 million. Our levy this year was just about $5.1 million. So that's your $185,000. And it is always a good fiscal practice for a school district to levy the amount that is allowable. Partly because this formula that runs based on your prior year levy. So if you don't go all the way up, you're kind of leaving that money on the table years forward. So we did also last time talk about our projected revenues. Not much in this has changed. As a reminder, the governor's budget is a proposal. The legislative budget typically comes out in April, so we're still a little bit in a waiting period here. I did want to talk about some of the big numbers and changes up here. So we've got our 3.6, that's at just about $185,000. You'll see this decrease in the state aid. That's that building aid that we talked about last time. There's some revenue dropping off, but once we get talking about the expenses, you'll see those expenses drop off as well. And then last year, in 24-25, we had a correction to a capital project to help close it out. That's that 239. So this 58% decrease, it sounds like a lot. It's really just because the last time we used it, it was for a one-time specific correction. So overall right now, our revenues are projected at 24.9. And you may be, looking at these numbers going, wait a minute, 24-25 is 25.1. So we are looking at an overall decrease in our revenues, overall decrease in our budget. Not typically what we like to see. Some of this is coming from changes in the foundation aid formula, some of it is coming from changes in our district. But just keep in mind that this overall number, typically you see budgets go up year to year. This year we're looking at going down a little bit. All right, so I've split this into the portions that voters will see on the budget newsletter that we send home, just to kind of keep it consistent for us. So when we look at these, I'm going to talk about some of the big numbers. We have for programs for students with disabilities, a few more folks who are placed in out-of-district placements. One of those placements can be up to $100,000. So that's a lot of variability in these numbers. As I said, we are kind of working towards building that continuum in district so that we can have those kids stay here with us. But right now we have a few kids who need what we can't provide right now. You'll also notice, I want to talk about CTE. So a 22% increase in cost. We also had between 24-25 and 25-26, over 20% increase in participation from our kids. One thing to keep in mind about this number is it's based on prior year enrollment. So 23-24 to 24-25, we had 20% more kids participate in the CTE program. And then some of these are mostly breakages and small adjustments here. But this health insurance number, this employee benefits number is huge. Our consortium that we participate in with many other districts in Wayne County, Monroe County, they have projected about a 15% increase in health insurance alone. So, and benefits is one of the biggest costs we have as a district. We're a people business, so our two biggest expenses are typically salaries and benefits. So you can see here, it's going up quite a bit with an overall $1 million increase to our instructional side of our budget. So these, what are the drivers here? Special ed tuition, our CTE costs because we have more kids participating, and those insurance rates are really what's pushing it. Excuse me. So our capital budget, this is mostly our O&M folks, a couple other items in there that are non-personnel related. So that's gone up, O&M has gone up, let's say about $360,000, 19%. That's really high. Part of the reason it's really high, and most of the reason it's being driven that way, is not personnel related. It's our utility costs are projected to increase between 30 and 40% next year. And this is only projected to continue or increase as we get pushed towards that electrification. So as we move towards that, our natural gas costs, our electricity costs, they're increasing pretty rapidly. So that's the primary driver in O&M. I just want to stress that's not personnel, it's not equipment, it's well and truly our utility costs. Some slight adjustments. Again, you're going to see the employee benefits about 15%. And then you'll see this debt service number. So, we talked about on the revenue side, our building aid is falling off. On the debt service expense side, we're seeing those decrease as well. You'll see this number come back up as we take out some debt for the capital project, get some aid going on that. These are big numbers. These are bonds. So when we talk about a $32 million capital project, at some point we have to pay all that money back that we take out. And that's what's driving this number. So once those bonds get sold, it's a set schedule, and you shouldn't have quite this much fluctuation. This is really because we have kind of a gap between a set of bonds. And then the transfer to capital funds, I misspoke earlier. So this transfer to capital funds, again, we talked about the 239 on the revenue side. This year we had 239 to correct that capital project and $100,000 for our capital outlay. So the reason you're seeing a decrease by 239, that capital project correction is gone. We're back to just our capital outlay. And what a capital outlay is a small, like a mini capital project. We're allowed to spend up to $100,000 every year to address something in the schools, and then we get aid on that. And it's a way to kind of keep up with things in between those big capital projects. We do want to do them. They're very helpful and we do get that aid. So, you know, we try to keep those in the budget every single year. So you'll see in this category, we had $1 million up in instruction, $1 million down in capital, shifting around in here. And again, the drivers here are utility costs and insurance rates. All right, our last of our three-part budget is the administrative budget. So, same thing, we'll talk about the big numbers here. In the superintendent curriculum development and supervision category, we have an increase in there, partially driven by some BOCES costs, also partially driven by, we had some expenses that were pushed to the grants, and now we're seeing those fall back into the general fund budget. So nothing new there, just a shifting of where the funding is coming from. In the financial services costs, there is an increase in there. This is related to a transition of our financial system. Bless you. Thank you. So when we transition financial systems, there's a period of overlap where we're essentially paying for two softwares because our audit doesn't close out until November. So I have to have both for a little bit. That'll fall back off once we get through that transition period. And those are BOCES costs, so they are aided. And then again, same thing in here, employee benefits driving up. This other special services, this is primarily our BOCES administrative costs. So those are increasing as well. Overall here, just 175,000, we'll round up 180,000 increasing overall. But again, not personnel driven, primarily those BOCES services, insurance rates, and a little bit of those grants falling off and shifting around. All right, so again, you know, what are our drivers here? We've got our utility costs, our health insurance. There is a little bit of an impact still from CPI. Every year it costs more to do the same thing. I'm sure we're all feeling that at home in our pockets too. So where this leaves us is about $24.9 million of revenue, but $25.4 million of expense. That leaves us with a gap of about 450. So last time we spoke, we were at $1 million. We were able to get some updated information from folks, adjust some of our factors, and we're able to get that down to about 450,000. Now we have to present a balanced budget to the voters. And we can't go out to them and say we still have a gap of 450,000. We do have to figure out what's going on in that gap. But we had a really accelerated budget schedule this year, just due to the timing of our board meetings. So we do have a March 26th workshop, but it may be beneficial for us to add a meeting in early April to be able to present that balanced budget to you folks, get that information out, so that we're not going from having this gap to adopting. So this is currently, you know, what I would propose is have a little time to talk. Again, that legislative budget will come out April 1st. If there are any changes in that, it'll be helpful for us to incorporate those. And that, you know, again, we do have to address that gap. All right, any questions? So it's a percentage, it's based on our building aid ratio, which I don't have memorized off the top of my head, but I believe we're sitting around 84, 86%. It's pretty substantial for us. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Norman?
My timing on my MVPs today is a little bit off. We normally get an opportunity to read some of our MVP awards. The first MVP award was that I would like to read was for Ben Popel, of course. Ben was just here, unfortunately, and left. It reads, personally, my family and I are very fortunate for his skills, patience, and passion for the sport. This is our second year being a part of the wrestling community, and it truly creates a solid family atmosphere for his athletes and their families. There are only 2 girl varsity wrestlers, and we are forever grateful that Ben goes above and beyond. The wrestling season isn't just a winter season with Ben. Behind the scenes, he is finding and hosting practices, clinics, and tournaments, both pre-season, during season, and post-season. He had something in place for every weekend for our varsity girls this current wrestling season. With those matches came more mat time, and both of our girls were seated at the sectional tournament. After just two years of wrestling, his JV wrestling girls were able to, one of them were able to walk away with the title of first place champion. I admire Ben's commitment to the sport and commend his work with the teams and families both on and off the mat. My daughter has the utmost respect for him and considers him a great leader and coach. She truly appreciates his expectations and all of his guidance as he helps the team navigate tricky situations on and off the mat. Ben is a true MVP.
Too bad he wasn't here for that.
You did get to read it though.
Yeah.
Yes, he did get to read it. The second one that I picked to read today was for Victor Rocher. It was up on our list as well. Starts with, I owe my entire career to Mr. DeRocher. I had very little direction by the end of my senior year at Red Creek Central School. Mr. D took me aside and suggested I check out the technology education program at SUNY Oswego. He made the appointment for me so I could meet with the chairperson. The rest, as they say, is history. I graduated from Red Creek in 1997, earned my teaching degree from SUNY Oswego in May of 2001, and started my teaching career at Long Beach Public Schools in September of 2001. I know for a fact that there are many more Red Creek alumni that could share similar stories. He has been a tremendous asset to this community for 40 years. So there's a testament. That's not a current employee. That's not even somebody that lives in our school district. And this recognition program has gotten some roots and has expanded outside of our local community, but still ringing true some of the same stories and success pieces that we've been able to bring to you folks over the last several months. So just sharing again.
It's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to, thank you. We're gonna move on to the meeting minutes for February 5th. Could I have a motion, please? Mrs. Dingman and a second by Mrs. Kaiser. There was a correction to these, so any other questions, corrections? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on. Yes.
I'd like to approve D1 through 4.
I'll take that motion, thank you. Mrs. Dingman, can I have a second, please? Mrs. Holtz? Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? The budget kind of put us right back into the coma. Maybe, Ozzy. So thank you for that. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Could I have a motion for something?
Could I have a motion for E1 through 4 except for E3, 1?
Thank you. Could I have a second for that, please?
I'm sorry, what did she just,
Right.
except for E
The
4
the
through?
table. So it's 1 through 4 except for E31, right?
No, I thought we were tabling.
Yeah, we're tabling 4 through 14.
So do E1 through 4 with the exception of E2, 4 through 14,
Yes.
and 3, 1.
Yes, yes. I second that.
We have a bunch of motions. I think they're all the same. Did you get that? Because I didn't.
Yeah.
We have you with first, 2 seconds.
I'll take anybody on this end, but do you want to read back what you're writing, just so that we're all on the same page?
So of E3, 1, and E2, 4 through 14.
No.
Yes.
Wait,
Yes,
that's
right.
right. We're pulling out 2, E2, 4 through 14.
Yes, that's
And-
what she just said.
Yes, it is. That's the
She
second
just said
thing
that, and then we're pulling out E3, 1.
Any other questions?
Is there a second on that?
Was Mrs. Kaiser? We all know what we're voting on now? Okay. Just double checking, triple checking. Okay, when you're ready.
Mrs. Decker?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Stephanie?
I'm
sorry.
I think we're in the South. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Is the oxygen on in here tonight, or what's going on? It's never awful warm. Could I have a motion, please, for either one of those items that's left on the consent agenda, please?
I'll make a motion for E3-1.
Okay, can I have a second, please? Mrs. Allen? Mr. Van Orman, did you have?
Absolutely. I'm gonna, I'd like to turn over, cede my time on this to Mr. Taylor. And Mr. Taylor, ask him to speak just briefly on, this, Mrs. Wentworth.
Mrs. Wentworth was one of the first teachers to reach out when I first came to Red Creek. Sorry.
Mr. Anthony's walking all over here.
She's one of the first teachers to reach out to me when I first came 7 years ago. She's just tremendous. She's a tremendous person. It's very easy to talk to Mrs. Wentworth about anything. She's done all kinds of different roles. Most recently, the past couple of years, she's been in math, fighting for us. She's been a class teacher multiple times. And last year she took over Inventive Minds as well, and was one of our key people in our Inventive Minds role. So she's just a great person, very easy to talk to, and she's been missed. Because she really enjoy her minutes as it was work on a daily basis. So she's great.
Please wish her congratulations for us. Any comments, questions? Are you ready?
Mrs. Foltz?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes?
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mrs. Decker? And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Can I have a motion, please, for the last?
I would like to make a motion to table E2, 4 through 14.
Second. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Kaiser. Okay, with no objections, and that'll move to be tabled to the next meeting for April 23rd. That's gonna be the most complicated part of the evening, so are you, you ready? Okay, good. All right, moving on to new business. I have a motion for a few, all.
Can we do all?
Yes? I'd like to make a motion F1 through 15.
Okay, the motion on the floor is for F1 through 15. Second by Mrs. Kaiser.
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay, when you're ready.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Foltz?
Yes.
Mrs. Decker? Mrs. Dingman?
Yes?
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes. Okay, administrative reports. Any questions on these? Okay. Mr. Bowman, did you want to talk about enrollment?
Nice. Flipping through, hold on, apologize. So again, enrollment chart, attendance dipped just a hair. For some reason, I had put in my brain 93% as kind of a benchmark. We just dropped a little bit underneath that. February is a funky month though, because we, have a lot. We have 5 less instructional days in that month, and of course, sickness starts to build this time of the year, especially with the types of weather and so forth that we've had. So, not unexpected, not troubling so much in terms of the attendance rate, but something to just track. Enrollment data, again, month to month, the last 2 months since December, we've been basically flat. Even since November, we're down a total of 3 students since the November report. which is not really anything of significant number, but I think overall, from September, and our enrollment from September, we're down 20 students. And, you know, from this time last year, we're down 30 students. So those are certainly starting to creep up into the status of significance numbers. So, again, as I talk about all the time, it's difficult. Not all of those things fall in each of the grade levels, but you know, as we kind of hit some of these bubble grades and start to look at our trend data of live birth rates and where are students and are they enrolling in our pre-K program, which we'll have coming up this spring, and tracking them into kindergarten, trying to staff the school programs based on student need and enrollment sizes is something that we need to begin taking a hard look at. So, and again, for me personally, having a chart like this shows that linear progression of those, good, bad, or indifferently, but it gives us some data points over the last year and month to month each year. So I hope it's helpful for you folks as well to kind of see those numbers.
Thank you. Any questions about that? Okay. Not that we haven't heard from you enough, Mr. Welcher, but I'm gonna skip past you because I'm assuming you didn't have anything to add to recognition? Okay. Can I ask the board if anyone has any committee updates to share? No?
The PTA is doing a chocolate fundraiser, and the Shamrock Jig will be in a couple weeks. And Mr. Briggs helping out, so.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, then I would take a motion to move into executive for a litigation matter, please. Mrs. Holt in a second. Mr. Joyce. Thank you very much.